Know about this nigga? I ain't seen this nigga in a minute, gang. Damn. If you ain't gonna click on this video, I ain't gonna lie. I haven't seen myself in a minute. It was always. I ain't gonna lie. I haven't seen myself in a minute. What the fuck?
Yeah. Now, does anyone have a group of friends that's just a little bit dumb? Well, so did Odysseus. You see, he had a problem. His crew, it wasn't all there. But Odysseus was not like them. He was extremely smart. In fact, he won a war for the Greeks called the Trojan War. He said, all right, look, y'all, we're going to get inside this horse, right?
Wow.
Send the horse inside the
Trojan War. The Trojan War. Now, chat. Now, when we look up Trojan, you know, I'm not even going to... Do I even look up Trojan? I'm not even going to look up Trojan because I'm on live. But we know what we all think of when we think of Trojan, right? That's crazy how they play with that word. That is crazy. That is crazy. The Trojan War. Wow.
We're going to hop out, and then we're going to open the gates from inside. Somebody said, Odysseus said, yeah. Somebody said, so you say this is a present. When do we jump out of the horse and say surprise? Odysseus said, no. All right, he's not getting in the horse. Everybody else, come on, let's go. So they hop in the horse. They win the battle of Troy. Time to go home. Now, their home is only 2 weeks away, so they said, all right, this is finna be a breeze. First, let's get some food. We kind of hungry. So they stop by this island over here, right? They meet these people called the Ciconis people. They say, hey, look, we just going to take your food. The Ciconis people said, nah, we like our food. So they said, nah, we just going to take it by force, though. Odysseus and his crew raid the Ciconis people. They start chilling on the beach. Or they said, all right, ready to go? They said, nah, like, let's party a little bit. These men started turning up a little bit. Ciconis people slide back with many more people. Ciconis people said, can we have our food back? Odysseus said, what if I say no? Ciconis people said, nah, you know what? Honestly, we wasn't asking for real. Ciconis people start smoking Odysseus. It's a hard-fought battle. Odysseus loses 76 men. Now, Odysseus started with 12 ships. I want you to remember that. And about 600 men. So 76 men, that's a good amount of men. But they hop on their boats, they sail off. They get blown off course. Somebody said, man, I want to go home. Odysseus said, I want to go home. Y'all got to lock in. Somebody said, all right, chill, bro, chill. What's that? Odysseus said, what?
This game, you're not ready.
It's been behind the YouTuber the whole time. Dad, Odysseus said, it looked like a flower. We in ancient Greece, so, like, don't touch the flower. Somebody said, huh? A couple of his men start eating the flowers. Odysseus said, y'all stupid? He said, nah, I'm not stupid. My name's Death.
If you, at least what I'm learning, things that look pretty in the wild or look pretty, but they're always poisonous. That's always what I learned. The shit that looks pretty, that catches your eyes, the shit that kills you. Isn't that crazy too? Like, yo, that shit is actually like, nah, that's crazy. That's crazy. That's so fucking crazy. That's actually crazy.
Wow. Those aren't even ancient Greek name. Like, you good? The flower was making his men forget everything. So he gathers up the rest of his men. He hops on the ship. He said, all right, come on, let's go. We gotta go. Let's go. Next island they land on, the Cyclops' island. Damn, the Cyclops starts snacking on them. But the Cyclops had a lot of sheep, right? So the rest of the men start hiding behind the sheep. And to make matters worse, the Cyclops blocks the entrance from his cave with a boulder. Odysseus loses it. He said, you know what? I'm tired of this. Hey, yo, Cyclops, you blocking the way, big bro. Cyclops says, so? Odysseus said, hold on, you speak English? He said, yeah, I just don't speak to my food. Now remember, Odysseus is smart, so he hatches up a plan. He says, why don't we have a drink though? Like, we can chill, let's break bread. Cyclops said, all right, let's do it. So they start drinking. Cyclops falls asleep. Boom, they blind him. Odysseus then says, by the way, Cyclops, my name is Nobody. He says this because when the Cyclops runs outside to get his Cyclops friends, he says, yo, nobody blinded me. Nobody blinded me. His friend said, nobody blinded me? So you good? Cyclops said, no, stupid, nobody blinded me. But at that point, Odysseus and his crew were gone. And here's where things start to get wicked. As Odysseus is sailing away from the island, he looks back at the Cyclops. He says, by the way, my name not really Nobody. Stupid. My name is Odysseus.
Ah!
The Cyclops said, Odysseus. That, you see, what Odysseus did know is that the Cyclops' daddy was named Poseidon, the god of the sea. And, well, you need the sea to get home. So the Cyclops said, Daddy, get them folk. Poseidon said, bet. Poseidon makes their journey a living nightmare and blows them way off course. But Odysseus meets a guy that gives him a bag of winds. He said, look, this little wind gonna take you home. Don't open the rest of the bag though. Odysseus said, okay, use a little bit of wind, don't open up the rest of the bag. Got it. Odysseus and his crew use the winds and they finally make it home. They can see their home over the horizon. But then Odysseus falls asleep. And remember, his men are stupid. So they looked at his bag and they said, man, what are Odysseus really got in there though. Somebody said, ooh, rocks. Nah, that's stupid. What about treasure? Everybody said, treasure. Yeah, that must be it. So they open up the bag. Odysseus wakes up. He says, no, you fools. All hell breaks loose. The winds explode out. They get blown massively off course again into an island of giants called the Laestrygonians, and they destroy 11 out of 12 of Odysseus' ships. So Odysseus is only down to 1 ship. Somebody said, I'm tired, Odysseus. Odysseus said, okay, how about we rest on that island over there? Damn, they land on the island of the witch Circe. Odysseus stays on the ship. A scouting party goes over to see what food they could find. So she said, what's good, y'all? Come inside, come inside, come eat. They said, you alone over here? She said, huh? Suddenly the men hear a word. They said, ooh, what's that? She said, it's my pet lion, no big deal. They said, that makes sense. So the men started to eat her food. She said, how y'all like the food? They said, it's pretty good. She said, Dracarys! Boom! She turns them into pigs. But one of the men escaped, and they tell Odysseus. They said, Odysseus, help! Odysseus start going over to meet up with Circe. A guy named Hermes pulls up and gives Odysseus something to where Circe's magic can't affect him, right? So Odysseus pulls up to Circe. He said, I thought I saw my men come this way. She said, no, I ain't seen your men for real. You want some food? He said, no, I ain't hungry. She said, we got a clever Wingardium Leviosa. Nothing happens. Odysseus said, what language that is? Espanol? She said, no, it's... And you kind of got aura for real, I'm not going to lie. All right, let me turn your men back. Circe turns Odysseus' men back into humans. Odysseus said, my dogs. They said, you mean pigs. Everybody started laughing. Circe said, laugh now, cry later. Odysseus said, no, she wants to see Drake. Excuse me, what'd you say now? She said, I could low-key see you in the future, and, the journey not going to end well. So y'all might want to go to the land of the dead and get some advice on how, to get home. So Odysseus and his men go to the land of the dead to get advice from a prophet. He said, your men trash, y'all not going to make it. He said, that's it? He said, yes. Odysseus said, nah, that can't be right. We gonna make it home. His men pulled up. They said, what did he say, Odysseus? What did he say? Odysseus said, get back on the ship. We going home. The prophet said, let me see into the past real quick again. That's not what I said. Odysseus said, The prophet said, oh, my fault. All right, y'all. Blessings. Now, the prophet blessings! Facing in his journey. He said, watch out for the sirens. Watch out for the monsters. Don't let your man touch the cattle. Boom. The sirens are these monsters that sing, lure you off the ship. So Odysseus makes his men plug their ears. He ties himself to the mast. Boom. They get past him. Lose a few men. They then get to a 6-headed monster and a whirlpool. They have to cross through one of them. Odysseus says, I choose a dragon. 6 heads means 6 people. So Odysseus loses 6 people. And he hears them scream his name as he sails off. So Odysseus got past the sirens. He got past the monsters. Yeah. All that was left was don't touch the cattle. The cattle of the sun god Helios, to be more specific. Odysseus looked at his men. He said, look, don't touch the cattle. They said, why? Odysseus said, all right, if y'all must know, I heard a prophecy saying that if y'all touch the cattle, y'all all gonna be, look at that picture, that's the sun god Helios. Does he look friendly? I said, not really. Odysseus said, don't touch the cattle. They said, all right, bet. And to his man's credit, they didn't touch the cattle until they got stuck on the island and got a little hungry. They said, man, come on, let's just eat the cattle. Odysseus said, don't touch the cattle. They said, all right, bet. Odysseus falls asleep. They said, anyway, they eat the cattle. Odysseus wakes up and says, c'est bien ça. They said, okay, Odysseus, we didn't know you speak Francais. Anyway, we good, bro. Like, we gonna deal with the problems later. Helios flies over to Zeus. He says, Zeus, you're not gonna believe this. Zeus said, huh? Boy, can't you see I got lights to run? Like, what you want? Helios said, watch your mouth. Because I'll take this sun and I'll fly over to Hades' world. Zeus said, all right, let's not get drastic. What you need? Helios said, they took my cattle. Zeus said, what? He said, Odysseus and them ate my cattle. Zeus said, nah, I ain't
what is a cattle, Jack? What is a cattle, though? What is a cattle? What is a cattle? What is Helios cattle? I don't know.
Light someone. Don't worry, wait till them folk get back on their ship. Odysseus and his men start approaching the ship. Zeus said, they stop, listen. Zeus said, they said, they hop on the ship. Zeus said, boom! Zeus sliced the ship, takes everyone out. He said, ooh, tell the Golden State Warriors that they need one. Except Odysseus, because Odysseus, didn't partake in the eating of the cattle. Odysseus is barely making along on a piece of wood until his problems go from bad to worse. The god of the sea Poseidon pulls up, says, remember me? You was messing with my son early. Starts jostling around Odysseus and start hitting him with wave after wave after wave. But Odysseus makes it to the island of Calypso. Calypso sees Odysseus. He said, ooh, we kind of... Hey, come here. Calypso falls in love with Odysseus and traps him on her island for 7 years. But every single day, he would go to the beach and look out into the water longingly. She said, that's not my problem. Athena goes to Zeus. She said, all right, come on. Zeus said, what? Athena said, Odysseus tired. Just let that man go home. Zeus said, man, what? Ooh, Calypso. Calypso said, yeah. He said, let him go. And before you even think about saying anything, you remember my name's Zeus, right? Calypso said, all right, relax. Calypso lets Odysseus go. He makes a makeshift raft. He said, it's finally time to go home. Poseidon pulled up. He said, who's going home? Odysseus said, Poseidon, come on. Poseidon started hitting him wave after wave after wave. But Odysseus washes up on an island with some friendly folk, and they help him go home. Now, at this point, it had been 20 years. His home was not the same home that he left.
I ain't gonna chat. This nigga really, like, makes me want to learn history. Like, shout out my son here. I really fuck with this nigga, gang. This nigga really makes me want to lock into history. Like, I imagine in school, teachers taught like him. Niggas would really want to lock in, bro. We don't get this in school, gang. At least the school that I went to, gang. We barely got this, bro. We barely got this, gang. Like, we need more people like him.
Pulls up to him. She said, all right, dress as a beggar. Scope out your house real quick. He goes to his house to see suitors all over his crib trying to marry his wife, because Odysseus was the ruler of his land. So if they married his wife, they was going to be the ruler of the land. So the suitors running amok inside his crib. He said, oh, okay, bet. One of the suitors pulled up. They said, somebody get this beggar out of here. Odysseus said, Odysseus just goes to the back, he calms himself down, he chills. Odysseus' wife, Penelope, who had been waiting for Odysseus this whole time, says, all right, fine, it's finally time to marry somebody. And side note, she spent all this time not getting married to somebody because she was tricking them by weaving this funeral thingy, and then she was unweaving it at night. One of the servants snitches on her. So the suitor said, all right, girl, stop stalling, it's time to marry one of us. Odysseus' wife said, okay, if one of y'all can draw Odysseus' bow, it's a really hard bow to draw, then I'll marry you. She know they can't do it. Many try, many fail, until the beggar in the back, who was Odysseus, draws the bow. Everybody said, pulls that thing back and shoots through all the targets lined up in front of him. And then he turns the bow around and starts pointing it at the suitors. They said, no, the target's over there, the target's over there. Odysseus said, y'all slow with him? He takes out the cloak like he in Scooby-Doo him. He starts shooting that thing at the suitors. His son comes in, helps him out. They smoke all the suitors. Odysseus pulls up to his wife and said, I'm finally back. Now, she was still a little suspicious, so she said, oh, I'm so glad you're back. Servants, move the bed to another room so me and Odysseus could lay there and like talk. Odysseus said, nah, that's impossible. One of the bed's leg is actually a tree. I made the bed around a tree. He passed the test. Penelope and Odysseus embraced, and after 20 long years of trying and failing to keep his boys safe, Odysseus finally gets a deep breath.
Damn, the video that says watch before